Barnes, top of the key. Vassell down low. Champagny and Johnson the other side. Ball to Barnes. Barnes will spin. Shoots over Butler. It's up and good. He hit it at the buzzer. The Spurs pile onto the floor and mob Harrison Barnes. The Spurs have beaten the Warriors in a game Golden State had to have. Harrison Barnes with an unbelievable shot. Jimmy Butler was all over him.
Wow.
6 of 9 for Harrison Barnes from beyond the arc. And the Chase Center crowd is shocked. People are murmuring, shaking their heads as they head up the aisles and head out into a Bay Area evening. And the Golden State season just got a lot more complicated.
Just a stunning, awful, unbelievably bad loss for the Golden State Warriors tonight as they fall 114-111 to the San Antonio Spurs. You heard it from Tim Roy, voice of your Golden State Warriors. The hero for San Antonio and the one who threw the dagger into the hearts of the Dubs is none other than the familiar face Harrison Barnes. I mean, what a shot he made from 27 feet away, fading over Jimmy Butler with 3.1 seconds left to deliver victory to the Spurs and to snatch potential victory from the Golden State Warriors in a game that, simply put, they had to win. This was a game they had to win to essentially give themselves the inside track to get out of the play-in. Now, that is not certain. Now, it isn't out of the realm of possibility as the Golden State Warriors fall again by 3 points. They are now sitting, as things stand, in 7th place. They are 47-33. If the season ended today, the Golden State Warriors would be playing in the first play-in game against the Minnesota Timberwolves for the right to go play the Houston Rockets. And if they lost, obviously they would play the winner of the Kings and the Mavericks for the right to go play the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, the good news for Golden State before we get to all the crazy things that happened down the stretch. And oh, by the way, you are listening to Warriors Wrap Up here on 95.7 The Game, live from Splash at Thrive City. My name is Evan Giddings, and the phone number is 888-957-9570. If you'd like to call in, tell us what you're feeling right now. If you were at the game, if you were watching the game, what your takeaway is from this loss, that after a 22-6 run over the last 28 games with Jimmy Butler, it feels like a lot of that progress that they made was potentially thrown down the drain after losing to a Spurs team that at the end of March you beat by 42 points on the road. And, look, this is an awful loss for many reasons, but first and foremost, it's because it drops you back into the play-in. Now, again, the good news for the Dubs is that the way things shake out is Memphis has a very tough schedule starting tomorrow. I believe they get Denver, Houston, and I believe it's the Clippers. I got to check real fast on Memphis's final 3 games. But essentially, if they lose one of their last 3, and the Golden State Warriors, Minnesota is that third opponent for Memphis. Minnesota, Denver, and then Dallas. Those are the teams that they play heading into the postseason. If they lose one of those games and the Warriors win out, so they win on Friday against Portland, and then they beat, arguably, a tough Clippers team on Sunday, the Warriors would have the tiebreaker over Memphis and get out of the play-in having the 6th seed. I think that is of the utmost importance right now, considering what I believe to be the downfall tonight for Golden State. And yes, it was turnovers. Yes, 0 of 7 on 3-point shots in the fourth quarter. Yes, stupid mistakes that they made time and time again. The non-Curry minutes, maybe not having post tonight, or Gary Payton II hurt them. But they got outscored by nearly 20 points in the non-Steph minutes at the beginning of the second quarter and the beginning of the fourth quarter. A 19-3 run for the Spurs at the beginning of the second got them back into this game. And then out of halftime, a 12-point lead going into the fourth quarter essentially evaporated after a 15-4 start for the San Antonio Spurs. Both of those large stretches was when Steph Curry was off the floor. So we can talk about all of these things, but to me, this simply comes down to the Warriors broke down. Fatigue after 6 games in 10 days for an older team, for a team that has been playing, by their words, playoff basketball since they acquired Jimmy Butler officially on February 8th, to me, this was a game in which they just broke down. They did not have enough left in the tank to finish the San Antonio Spurs off. And that's why, even though this loss does not mark the end of their season, it was a loss that I did not foresee. I did think this was going to be a tough game. For those who listened to Warriors Live pregame, I told you this was not going to be an easy game for the Warriors, and the reason was because of that last stat. 6 games in 10 days. And San Antonio is a team that has a lot of players that, number one, would like to stick it to Golden State, but also still have stuff to play for. Stephon Castle, we found out, was, and still is, a dude. Harrison Barnes obviously hit the biggest shot of the game. Chris Paul was sensational in this basketball game, specifically in the first half when he was a perfect 4 of 4 and had 12 points. He was jawing with pods. I thought he got the best of them for most of this game. He was talking to the Warriors bench, going to the locker room at halftime, even though they were trailing at that point. The Spurs were by 455-51. Like, this was a game where the Spurs just simply did not roll over the way the Phoenix Suns did last night. And it was almost as if the Warriors just expected the Spurs, who at this point of the season have nothing to play for, they're eliminated, to just wilt. But that's not what happened. And I thought the Warriors, specifically Draymond Green, and to some extent Steph, but I think more so the rest of the team, Draymond Green specifically, I thought, got worn down in this game, and he ran out of steam. And as evident by 2 boneheaded turnovers in the fourth quarter, got scored on twice by Keldon Johnson, and the Warriors nearly got bailed out by a couple of dumb fouls committed by the Spurs, specifically by the guy who hit the game-winning shot, Harrison Barnes. Keldon Johnson scores with seconds left in the game, 32.6 over Draymond. And the Warriors are bringing up the court, and Harrison Barnes, inexplicably, with 3 seconds left in the game, fouls Draymond Green, who then goes to the free throw line, and to his credit, made 2 very clutch free throws to tie the game at 111 before Harrison Barnes obviously delivered the dagger. But this was a game that I do not think the Warriors deserved to win. I'm not sure if it was a game in which they felt like they played better than the Spurs tonight. I mean, overall, the Spurs just hung around, basically, and the Warriors, I thought they gave them this game. I thought this was a game that the Warriors should have won, but because of lackadaisical play, I think because of their settling, they were actually outscored in this game in the paint. And that, to me, is the sign of a team who now is not as good of a three-point shooting team with Jimmy Butler on it, who is tired on the 6th game in 10 nights, and took a lot of three-pointers. There was a stretch at the beginning of this basketball game in which the Warriors took 22 three-pointers in the first 18 minutes. And that's typically what good teams will do against bad teams that they do not care to play with effort against. I thought that the Warriors came out defensively focused, but offensively they were lazy at the beginning of this game. They assumed that when they went up 9-0, and then I think it was 11-3, that the Spurs, like the Suns last night, were just going to go away. And they didn't. They came out and they continued to fire to the point where it was only an 8-point game at the end of the first. And then the Spurs, at the beginning of the second quarter, took it to the inside against Golden State, whether Draymond Green was on the floor or not, and the Warriors just had no answers offensively. I realized they scored 111 points in this game, but I thought that offensively they left a lot on the table, and it's why a couple of my predictions came true in this game. But the one that I was firm on, our Fremont Bank take it to the bank prediction, I did not think the Warriors were going to eclipse 125.5 points. That was the prediction that I went with tonight, because I just felt like the Warriors were going to have to do it with their defense, and obviously the Spurs took advantage of it in both the second and fourth quarters. And that, to me, is the sign, for the second time this season, mind you, the Spurs in the fourth quarter have come from behind against the Warriors. Remember, it was the beginning of the end of the 12-3 start for Golden State all the way back in November. No Jonathan Kuminga that night, but the Warriors got outscored, I believe it was by 15 or more points. They scored 13 points in the fourth quarter against the Spurs, and they got eaten up. It was a game that everyone threw away and said, oh, it doesn't make a difference, not that big of a deal. And then they went on to lose a lot of basketball games, and it showed some of the flaws of the Warriors. I'm not sure if this game is one that highlights every single flaw of this team, but to me, the most important, and I've iterated this multiple times, whether it's on Warriors wrap-up, whether it's on Warriors this week, every single Saturday morning with my guy Dan Devone, the thing that is going to get the Warriors beat, whether it's in the regular season or in the postseason or potentially the play-in now, it's the fact that they have been playing and grinding away for so long that the fatigue and the stamina is eventually going to fade. To me, when they had that, I think they were a game below 500 when they got Jimmy, and they started to win a lot of games. And I'm looking at this schedule, and it wasn't necessarily treacherous, but if you're pushing yourself to the limit each and every night, like Kerr has talked about this team being willing to do and necessarily needing to do in order to get to the playoffs and, more importantly, get out of the play-in, well, then what are you going to have left when you get to the playoffs? What are you going to have left in a 7-game series when you're going every other game? Obviously, this was a back-to-back. Obviously, they've had 2 back-to-backs in less than 2 weeks. But the point remains, when the Warriors players, particularly their older players, have been worn down, they make mistakes in crunch time. One thing that stuck with me quite a bit is the fact that Kerr, when he gave Steph Curry a game off, this was back before the road trip, and I forget which game it was specifically. It might have been against Portland on March 10th. He talked about that game being one where Curry needed an emotional rest day, essentially. He needed that game off. Or pardon me, it was later actually against Milwaukee when the Warriors beat the Bucks. He needed that game off because when he gets tired, when he gets fatigued, he makes mistakes. And I thought that Curry was really good tonight, but that's something that actually I thought about in reference to Draymond Green, because he made a lot of mistakes down the stretch of the game, and it wasn't like he couldn't, he's not going to be able to make some of those plays. I think specifically on defense, he just didn't have it. He didn't have anything left in the tank, and I think it's because he's been taxed again and again, time and time again during this stretch in which the Warriors, to their credit, have had some really impressive victories. Again, they beat Milwaukee. They've beaten New York twice. They've beaten Denver, the Lakers, Memphis. They've gotten a lot of big wins, especially recently, but that has taken a lot out of them. And I think the ramification of that is being susceptible to a game against a team like the Spurs, where if they hit a couple of big shots, they might beat you. And so, in regards to the Warriors, championship aspirations, or the players and their I don't think it's a referendum on individual players, but to me, again, it highlights the lone, and really not the lone, but the biggest weakness, which has a trickle-down effect towards everything else that we're going to discuss in this game. But it's, do the Warriors have enough stamina to get to the end of the finish line, wherever that is? If it's in the postseason, is it the first round? Is it the second round? Could it be the Western Conference? Beyond, wherever people are putting them. On our station, we have a lot of different expectations for this team. I think the Warriors have the ability to win a series. Anything beyond that, to me, is going to be very difficult to do. And it's because I think that they're eventually going to run into a wall, the same way they ran into a wall tonight against a Spurs team that they had no business losing to. All right, 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings with you here, live from Splash at Thrive City. Appreciate everybody that's been filing in on YouTube and Twitch. I do not have access to the text line tonight, so if you have anything to say, please call in. Our guy Cam Williams, our network coordinator, will get you going. I think, and look, as I'm kind of going through some of these comments here, I understand that Kerr's going to be in the middle of the bullseye for a lot of people, and I don't necessarily think he did a great job tonight. But he pretty much ran things the way that he had to at the beginning of the game. Like, the second quarter to me is probably where you look at and say, all right, what could Kerr have done differently? And to me, it was probably a little more reliance than usual on someone like Guy Santos. Guy Santos was a -11 in 5 minutes in that first half, and overall only played 8 minutes. Didn't really get a lot of burn in this game because he was not very good. But to be fair, there just weren't a lot of options all around. Like, Kerr had to end up playing Jimmy Butler 38 minutes, Steph Curry 37 minutes, Draymond Green 33 minutes at the 5, which is taxing for him, on the tail end of a back-to-back. and they didn't have Gary Payton II this game. I think they really missed Quentin Post in this game and his instant offense. Buddy Hield made a decent amount of, Buddy Hield mistakes, but to his credit, he also knocked down 4 threes. I was ready to get up here and talk about how Steph, broke his 300-point threshold, 300 threes threshold, I should say, for the 6th season, most in NBA history. But I thought he even wore down a little bit down the stretch of that game. He hit 3 threes in a row in the third quarter, but outside of that, he was 2 of 14 total. He was 5 for 14 from three-point range. And when Steph is taking a lot of threes, I think it's because, again, he's a little tired. And the only guy I think that had energy in the tank for the tail end of a back-to-back, and I'm going to be honest, I think it was Jimmy Butler. Kuminga didn't get to play a whole lot tonight. Did not shoot it very well from three-point range and was kind of being left open. Obviously, Pods and Moody did not play very well in this basketball game whatsoever. A combined 2 for 12 from three-point range for them. Butler was the only guy that had anything left in the tank, in my opinion. And you could tell because he got to the line 17 times. And that was really the only form of offense for the Warriors in the fourth quarter that had any sort of consistency. Jimmy Butler putting his head down and trying to get free throws. That's what the offense was mitigated to, either because of turnovers, missed shots, which again point to me to weak legs, which is because they did not have anything left. They were running on E this entire game. That's kind of the way that I see things. 888-957-9570 is the number. Let's go out to Lil Ben in San Francisco. Lil Ben, what's going on? How we doing, man? Oh, Lil Ben just dropped. Oh, you hate to see it. I also see some people chiming in, Mob Psycho on YouTube, about how the Core didn't play the whole fourth last night versus the Suns. Again, it's not about just this game. It's about an accumulation of taxing physical games that eventually caught up with the Dubs. This wasn't just the second game in 2 nights. This was the 6th game in 10 nights. And the Warriors have been, again, they've talked about this. They have been playing playoff basketball now for 2 months. They acquired Jimmy Butler on February 8th. It has been 2 months, and to their credit, they have played awesome, winning, primarily basketball. They are 22-7 since that point. They are 22-6 with Jimmy Butler on the floor in these games. But when you play that amount of taxing, high-level basketball in which you have to be focused, in which you have to be energetic, in which you have to be able to summon that kind of level that they have, there's a downside to it. And that, to me, is what got them caught and beat tonight by the San Antonio Spurs. There were plays on defense in the second half where I saw dude just getting blown by. There was a back-to-back possession for Brandon Podziemski. That's right, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, because I thought that CP3 got the better of him. And for a lot of people wondering, Chris Paul is 39 years old. He's damn near 40. Turns 40 in April, actually, I believe. But neither here nor there. 9:40 left in the fourth quarter. Pods is backpedaling in transition. CP3 just gives him a 1 crossover, gets downhill to the cup, dumps it off for a basket. Next possession, Keldon Johnson, top of the key against Podziemski, blows by him quite easily, goes in for an easy layup. At that point, the Spurs had cut it to a 92-91 ball game before Jimmy hit a corner 3 and stabilized things a little bit. But the Spurs basically got whatever they wanted. And I think their athleticism helped them. I think their young guards helped them. Vassell had a nice start to this game. Stephon Castle over the course of this game was awesome. Chris Paul is not a young guard, but he had his way with some inexperienced players for the Warriors, who, again, I think were a bit tired. And I realize that at this point in the season, it's not an excuse a lot of people want to hear. But to me, that's just the reality. When I'm looking at the Warriors play down the stretch of this game, I'm just thinking, gosh, they're just getting walked down. They're like a boxer in the 13th or 14th round that is better than the opponent that they are boxing against. But maybe they've been rope-a-dope. Maybe they've fought multiple times in the last 2 months. They don't have anything left. And the Warriors, I talked about this pregame, this was a blue-collar game for them. This was a show up to work, bring your lunch pail to the court, and try and just get through with a win. And that's what the Warriors did. From the 7.5 minute mark on of the first quarter, which is when the Spurs scored their first points, this was a just get through it game, and the Warriors got caught. That's, to me, what happened. The only guy that had anything left to give was Jimmy Butler in the fourth quarter. Paz did not shoot it well, and to be fair, he's been awesome over the last month. He had a bad night. Moses Moody has been up and down shooting the three ball. Did not have a good night, 1 of 7 from three-point range. Draymond Green, I thought after the first quarter, if you look at his first quarter numbers, he had 8 points, 5 assists, and I think 5 rebounds and 4 assists. The rest of the game, that was in 8 minutes, by the way. The remaining 25 minutes of the game, Draymond Green ended up with 5 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. So in the first 8 minutes, he essentially accumulated the amount of statistics. I realize stats aren't everything, but just to put it in perspective of his ineffectiveness for the remainder of the game, in my opinion, along with a couple of those boneheaded plays down the stretch in which I thought he just lost his head. And Draymond Green, he's had those moments in the past, but that's what got you, part of what got you beat tonight. But Draymond essentially accumulated the same amount of stats in the first 8 minutes as he did over the remaining 25 minutes of this game. That, to me, it's fatigue. It's a lack of stamina. It's you being 35 years old and you trying to guard, after Bismack Biyombo got taken out of the game because he was awful. I'm not even going to try and say his name. My guy, Sandro Mamu. Mamu was helping out with 3 offensive rebounds. Keldon Johnson had 3 offensive rebounds. Julian Champenny, my guy from Pitt, was a plus 20 in this game. Keldon Johnson was a plus 20 in this game. The Spurs bench are essentially what came in and beat the Warriors, because the beginning of the second quarter and the beginning of the fourth quarter, when the Warriors did not have Steph Curry on the floor, could not figure out ways to generate offense. And I thought after the 7.5 minute mark of the first quarter until the end of this game, they could not find ways to generate stops consistently. That's what ended up getting them beat, in my opinion. 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings with you here live at Splash from Thrive City. You know, and this is it too, like, I'm walking around here. Shout out to our guy Tim Jordan, by the way. Engineer extraordinaire. Helps us with everything in 95.7 The Game and a host of other stations. He's here with his lovely wife, his first game of the season, and he shows up to see this, and the first thing he says is, "Phew, these boys look gassed." Like, gassed. And he's been to one game this year, and you could see it on their faces. Now, to be fair, Tim Jordan's been to more basketball games than I've ever forgotten. But I'm looking around, I'm talking to people here. Everyone is stunned at this performance tonight, and I understand why. But at the same time, this was a game, and I'm not going to say it is a scheduled loss. It's an awful loss because of the consequences and given the circumstances of you needing to win. But this was a game where I think they were just at the end of their rope of this condensed stretch of basketball. They were vulnerable against a Spurs team who smelled blood in the water and managed to eke out a win. You know, a lot of people might be thinking after this loss, all right, Harrison Barnes beat you on a fading 27-footer, and the Spurs barely got lucky and got by. Well, I'll tell you what, they were 17.5-point dogs in this game. There's no excuses to lose this game. You are now the 7 seed. If you do not beat Portland on Friday, which, oh, by the way, is not going to be an easy game. That's another team that has played the Warriors well this season. And then the Clippers, obviously, on Sunday, even though it is at home, that's not an easy game to win. I think the Warriors can get both of those games. But what they did is make, by losing tonight, extremely difficult on themselves. They made, and to be fair, they've made this entire season difficult up until getting Jimmy Butler. But even after going 22-7, they still could potentially be a play-in team and have to beat Minnesota or whoever comes out of the 9-10 if they lose that first game, and it's a one-and-done scenario. That's not anything I want to be a part of, just for the right, with less rest, to go play Houston or play OKC. To me, if the Warriors are to accomplish the goals that they set out for themselves when they acquired Jimmy Butler, which by the words of Draymond Green is winning a championship, guaranteeing one on Sunday right before the All-Star game, you cannot be in the play-in, because to me, again, the fatigue will continue to pile up. The stamina or lack thereof will mount for the Warriors. By playing in the play-in game, that's an extra day of rest and an extra 38 minutes you got to play your big boys. Then that takes you into the first round, in which you're going to be playing on the road, and you're going to have a rest disadvantage. And then even if you win that series, that's a potential pound of flesh being taken, which is going to roll over to the second series, in which you have less rest. There's consequences to all of this. There are consequences to not playing up to par against teams that you're supposed to beat. And the Warriors have beaten teams like this countless times now with Jimmy Butler. In fact, I would say that's been their superpower since they've acquired Jimmy over the last 29 games. Beating teams that they're supposed to. You know, this is by far and away their worst loss of the season, given the circumstances, given the spot, and given the opponent. Yes, Miami wasn't great. They got dogged by almost 30 points. Atlanta wasn't great on the road. But this was a game you had to get. Even Houston, you could understand. This was a game the Warriors had to get. Philadelphia was bad, but Jimmy didn't play in that game. And also, Curry didn't play in Atlanta or Miami. Like, this was a cataclysmic defeat damn near for the Warriors. All right, let's go on to Alameda. 888-957-9570 here on Warriors Wrap-Up. Evan Giddings with you live from Splash at Thrive City. 114-111 Spurs over the Dubs. Let's go out to Alameda and talk to Roque. Roque, what's up, my man? How we doing?
Hey, you know, I was feeling good before the game and part of the game, and then the fourth quarter, and was getting close to that moment. 2 minutes, I said, wait a second. This is San Antonio without Wembanyama? Are you serious? I mean, come on, we got to win every game. This is crazy. I mean, why are not taking this seriously? Are they trying to relax or what? You got to win every game. You might end up being number 8, or if you lose the next 2 games, you might be in a play-in. This is crazy, okay? And I don't know what Steve Kerr's doing. What's up with Post? Okay, I know we haven't been playing. I forgot his name right now. Post needs to be there too, and get him a little taste of this close game, like a playoff. You got to play every time of this thing like a playoff. I don't know. Oh, my God. This is San Antonio. What, 10 games under 500 or so, whatever?
Okay, hold on. Quentin Post was out tonight.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry.
He was ill, yeah.
He's not playing, but okay, that's why we got Jackson in there then. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, you're good.
But then but we were up, and I see the score. Every time I turn around, go up, stand up and get my drinks. And I said, what's going on? He's getting close. And then with all the people who's going to beat you, Barnes. Oh, my God. 3-point shot. Oh, I'm so hurt right now. I don't know what the next 2 games is going to be. I'm still not relying on these Warriors. They do this sometimes, once in a while. So I hope they win the next 2 games. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Appreciate it, Roque. Thanks for the call. Yeah, I mean, to your point, Quentin Post was ill tonight, missed the second consecutive game, but yeah, it highlights how much they miss Quentin Post. Like, they missed a 41% three-point shooter. They missed their best three-point shooter by percentage this season tonight. I don't think that's out of the ordinary. But to be fair, Spurs didn't have Victor Wembanyama or De'Aaron Fox. You know, so I don't know if you can necessarily do that. You know, another thing it might point to is the fact that, you know, the Warriors are, I don't know, kind of, I don't know if the word is brittle, but they're a delicate Jenga tower. We've sort of figured this out And why I was a bit surprised that Jimmy changed everything for the Warriors. Like, he's a big glue guy, but it also feels like when you pull a piece or two out from other parts of the tower, the Warriors morph into a different team. Like, they very much need to be whole. They very much need to be healthy. Obviously at the top, with Curry, Jimmy, and Draymond, but also some of their ancillary pieces. Quinn Post is an important piece of this team. They were 16 of 48 from three-point range tonight. They shot 33%. And while Pods has been on fire and picked a poor night to come back down to earth, while Moses Moody, I think, has been relatively consistent. He's been around 37% three-point range. He's been shooting it well. He did not have a good night, and he's been known not to have good nights. Steph forced 14 threes in this game. He missed 11 of them. Outside of Curry, and Buddy Hield played 26 minutes, which is probably a little bit too much for him, but you needed his shooting on the floor because Post wasn't available. That's where you look at this team and you remove a three-point shooter from an average-ish three-point shooting team to be nice. You remove one of their best defensive players in Gary Payton II from, a solid defensive. You're going to get hurt. And it's crazy that it comes against a Spurs team who basically played 8 guys in this game. Actually, more like 7. Blake Wesley only played 19 minutes, and Bismack Biyombo is freaking abysmal. I got a text from someone earlier that's saying that it told me that Bismack Biyombo was a player that you play to hide the fact that you're tanking. Like you're intentionally tanking when you start Bismack Biyombo. And he's been on God knows how many teams in recent memory, but he was awful tonight. And they basically went small and just ran the Warriors. That's kind of the way that things went in this game. And it's hard, again, to look at one game and say, all right, this player is X, this player is Y, this player is Z. They just, as a team, did not show up tonight. And it was frustrating considering the effort that I thought was there, both at the beginning of the game, but also throughout against Phoenix. But maybe it points more to the fact that Phoenix was a group that basically is just left for dead. With no KD, they roll over. They rolled over. The San Antonio Spurs did not. And outside of Steph Curry, who had 14 points in the third quarter, scored well really until down the stretch of this game. It also kind of points to the fact that Jimmy Butler, if we're looking at the postseason, if we're looking at big games coming up, I think that is who the Warriors kind of have to run things through down the stretch. He had one play where he lost it on a drive with about 3 minutes left. Stephon Castle finished over Curry to give the Spurs, I think, their first late lead. That was with 3 minutes left, 104-103. But then they give it to Butler. He finds a cutting Curry from the post. And then after a couple of turnovers, by the way, the Spurs also had their fair share of dumb decisions. Like, Castle got caught in the air and threw it over the head of a leaping Keldon Johnson with 2.5 left. Obviously, Harrison Barnes fouled Green with 3 seconds left when they were in the bonus, just inexplicably. But, I don't know. I mean, Butler putting his head down and getting to the free throw line with 98 seconds left. That's where the ball has to go. Gets to the paint and gets free throws. Jimmy, I thought, made what would have been the biggest defensive play of the game, backpedaling with under a minute to go, contesting. I think it was Castle who drove into the paint. Ball found its way into the hands of Butler. He gets fouled underneath, steps to the free throw line, knocks down 2 of 2 to give the Warriors a 2-point lead before eventually Keldon Johnson goes down and scores over Draymond twice to give San Antonio the lead. But the ball needs to be in Butler's hands down the stretch. It doesn't mean that it can't end up in Curry's. It doesn't mean that Curry can't be the one to take the final shot. But Jimmy Butler is the guy that I'm going to live and die with because I think he's also the one that is less taxed, is a bit more physical, and his brand of basketball is more suited to the postseason than some of the other younger players on this team. Anyone not named Curry, and Curry is great. He's fantastic. But the Spurs also tried to shut the water off for him. They were doubling him at half court after he scored 14 in the third quarter and made things more difficult on him in the fourth. And I thought Jimmy was going to be the one to try and bail the Warriors out. But overall, that's not the way that it worked out. All right, we're going to step aside and take a break and come back here after this. Steve Kerr, hang around. We got his full comments on the other side. May also have a little bit of sound from Draymond Green. I got to check with our guys back in the Laughing Monk Studios. Evan Giddings live here at Thrive City, just inside Splash. Stop by in the future. Last home game on Sunday. It's a great place to grab a beer, grab a burger. I got one right here I'm going to dig into in a moment, but we're going to take a quick break here, come back on the other side on 95.7 The Game. Evan Giddings here on Warriors Wrap Up.
Looking for lifelong financial guidance? Look no further than Pettinelli Financial Partners, your dedicated financial coaches for every stage of life's journey. Whether you're planning for retirement, starting a family,
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
All right, Evan Giddings with you live at Splash after a 114-111 loss from the Spurs, delivered by Harrison Barnes. A dagger, 27-foot fading three at the buzzer, nothing but the bottom over the hand of Jimmy Butler. And the former Warrior drives a dagger into the heart of the Dubs, putting them into the 7 seed. Right now, if the season ended today, they would play the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first play-in game. They essentially need to win out to give themselves a shot to get out of the play-in, and they do not now determine their own destiny. They need some help. Now, fortunately, a team like the Memphis Grizzlies, to me, is their most likely path out. They would need the Grizzlies to lose one of their next 3 games, which begins tomorrow against Minnesota. Then they play Denver, and they wrap up with the Mavericks. So hopefully odds are the Grizz will lose one of those next 3 games. And then obviously they have sort of an outside shot. If the Los Angeles Clippers, who played... the Clippers won tonight against the Rockets, who again sat all 5 of their starters. So the Clippers got 2 games left. The Warriors cannot catch them because even if they lose at the Kings and lose, they're a game back in the loss column of the Clippers. So they do not own the head-to-head tiebreaker. Denver is the other team potentially, but with a win tonight against Sacramento, the Warriors also a game back of the Nuggets. They would need them to lose their next 2. So, I mean, there's still an outside shot at the 5, but the most likely scenario for the Warriors, realistically speaking, is the 6. And they had an outside shot at the 3 if they had won this game today. And they'd also had a possibility to get the 4 seed if they had won today. They had a chance to get a home series if they just beat the lowly San Antonio Spurs, but no Wemby, no Fox. They could not get it done. Before we get back to the phone lines at 888-957-9570 is the number. I remind you that Crashing the Boards, brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Tonight, our leading rebounder was Draymond Green, who I thought did not play very well down the stretch of the fourth quarter, but he still had 3 offensive rebounds, 6 defensive, 9 total. Ends the game with 13 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists. 2 of his 3 turnovers came in the final 3 minutes. He, along with Steph Curry, unfortunately not taking great care of the basketball in crunch time. Only 10 turnovers, but the mistakes were timely, and they ended up costing the Dubs. Now let's go out to Millbrae, talk to our guy Eric. Eric, what's going on, man? You're on Warriors Wrap Up here on 95.7 The Game. How are you?
Hey, what's up, man? Just inexcusable loss. Warriors had no business losing this game. It shouldn't even come down to the final minute. You were leading that game 12 minutes. You're playing against a team without Wemby or Fox, their 2 best players, playing basically for a draft pick.
Oh, lost him. Call back if you can. He lost him there. Yeah, no, this was an awful loss. Like, you don't have to sugarcoat it. This was a terrible loss for the Warriors because of the ramifications in the standings that I mentioned, combined with the fact that the Warriors were 17.5-point favorites at closing. I realize not everyone is a degenerate like I, but that is a whole hell of a lot of points. You were supposed to win this game going away. I didn't think the Warriors necessarily were going to win this game handily. Now, they're supposed to, but I felt like because of the spot for the Dubs, the amount of games they played, a condensed schedule, the fact that the Spurs had just lost to them by 42 points a little less than 2 weeks ago, and also the fact that the Warriors were probably due for a poor shooting night, all of those things led me to believe that it was going to be tough to summon the same energy that they did also on the tail end of a back-to-back like they did against Phoenix, but I did not see them losing this game. This was a game they couldn't lose. It was a game they could not lose. And I guarantee you every single person from the top of the coaching staff to the 15th man on that roster understands why that was a game they could not lose. All right, let's hear from the head coach, Steve Kerr, in fact. Cam, if we can, cue him up. Steve Kerr after the 114-111 loss on a game-winning shot by Harrison Barnes. Coach Kerr, what do you got?
Is there a possession or kind of maybe an aspect to this one that stings the most?
No, not a possession. I just felt like we never, other than the first 5 minutes of the game and the first 5 minutes of the third quarter. And I never felt like we had control of them defensively. And so we left the door open. We know they're a really good three-point shooting team. They made 17 last night against the Clippers and hung in there and gave them a tough game. So this was not a surprise to see this kind of effort from the Spurs. But we couldn't contain them defensively. And when you do that, you leave the door open for shots like they hit, like the one Harrison hit at the end.
You were minus 16 in the non-Steph minutes.
Yeah.
How significant was that?
Huge. I thought that was the key to the game. Top of the second, top of the fourth. We played two great quarters tonight, first quarter and third quarter. And then both of those quarters, top second, top four, they blitzed us. I think they went 19-3 in the second quarter. And then to go into the fourth with a 12-point lead and immediate, I think it was maybe a 12-4 start, in the fourth. And those were the two key stretches of the game.
I think you had 3 turnovers in the last minute or so, one on inbound, some other entry passes. Mm-hmm. So that just sloppy passing, or were there some overplaying that you guys just couldn't make up for?
I think sloppy execution. Our spacing wasn't great, and so they made some good plays there. For the most part for the game, we took care of the ball, and then down in those last 2 minutes, and we've been playing really well down the stretch of games, closing games well. Tonight we weren't able to do it.
Obviously, we all know what this could mean for playoff standings. Do you talk to your team about that? Do you need something to try to change the mood or change the momentum after something like this?
This is the NBA, This is how it works. Everybody's good. Everybody's got talent. You're always vulnerable, no matter who you are. And it's going down to the wire for a reason. There's a lot of great teams in the West, and there's very few easy games. There's just very few games that fall into place. And because of the three-point line in the modern NBA, you're always vulnerable, and that's what got us tonight, 18 threes.
Coach, obviously a disappointing loss with you guys trying to win out the rest of the game so that you could make sure that you were in a pretty good position going into the playoffs now, dropping to the 7th seed. If you could share, what do you say to your team after a loss like this? What are you telling them looking forward after something like this to avoid?
We're already in the playoffs, and so this is what the playoffs feel like. A lot of pressure, lot on the line, tough losses, and so the only thing you can do is you pick up your chin and off the floor, and you get back at it the next day. So we got a huge game in Portland, and we'll fly there tomorrow and get these guys ready and right back at it.
Steve, what was harder to take, the late turnovers by your veteran guys, or the fact that the Spurs shot better than 70% in that fourth quarter against your defense? What was tougher?
All of it. I mean, to lose a 12-point lead to start the quarter at home, that's tough. But give the Spurs credit; they played a great game, and Harrison has been hot for a couple weeks, and even the shots he missed tonight were halfway down. He hit just an incredible shot to win the game. So we try to pick up the pieces from this and get right back at it tomorrow, or Friday, I guess, in Portland, and we'll look at the tape, see where we can get better, and that's what we're going to do.
And that's Steve Kerr after the 114-111 loss here. Bonta Hill checking in live from Splash at Thrive City after a 114-111 defeat. Harrison Barnes with the dagger at the buzzer. I think that Steve Kerr talked about a couple things there. And, oh, by the way, you are listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and H2 San Francisco, always live in the free Odyssey app, Twitch and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. He's absolutely right. You can lose to any team on any given night. There's talent all around the league. But this was a game that the Warriors could not afford to lose. This makes it difficult for them to secure a 6 seed or a 5 seed. They can still get into the 6 if Memphis loses one of the next 3 games. But the Warriors have to essentially beat both Portland as well as the Clippers. The Clippers have been a thorn in their side for a long time, for the last couple of seasons. And we'll see how they fare with Jimmy Butler, but that's also a game that the Clippers want to get. And so to me, This is a basketball game that if you're looking at the way that the Warriors are shaping up, they've obviously done a ton of work to get here. And it just sucks that it feels like this one loss undermines all the good that they did and went through. I would say, over the last week or so, you got those victories against Memphis, Los Angeles, and Denver. You're playing 6 games in 10 nights. This was the finish line of this condensed stretch, and they couldn't get to it. And yes, they got beat on a late shot by a team that had no business there, but a team that got hot from three-point range, a team that is young, that is long, that is athletic, that has been the Achilles heel for the most part for the Golden State Warriors this season. And also a group that, look, they caught the dubs, and they caught them on an off night. But the other part that stood out to me from what Steve Kerr was talking about is how this is playoff basketball. Jimmy Butler said that you will not know playoff basketball until it gets there. If this is how intense it is, if this is how difficult things are, I think it's going to be really hard for the Warriors to make an extended run in the postseason because of the amount of physically demanding basketball that they have had to play just to dig themselves out of this hole. And yes, it's because they play in a ridiculously stacked Western Conference. If you look at the standings right now, the Timberwolves have 46 wins. If they beat Memphis tomorrow night, they'll be tied with the Warriors for 47. That's the 7 and 8 seed. The top 8 teams are going to be right around 50. There's a whole lot of parity between 3 and 8 right now in the Western Conference. But it also means that because of that, the Warriors have had to play stressful games, stressful minutes. And they have an aging trio in Curry, Draymond, and Butler. Tonight, I don't think Steph showed it as much. I definitely don't think Jimmy showed his age as much. But on a night like tonight, Draymond Green's age, I thought, showed. And he's the DPOY front runner, and he's probably going to win it. But if he doesn't have his best stuff, the Warriors' defense suffers. And when he does not play well down the stretch of games, he can nuke that because he's careless with the basketball. We've seen it countless times. And again, it's not like this is a game that is going to show up 4 times in a row in the playoffs. But when we're thinking about at the end of this season, which I think is going to be very difficult for them to turn into a championship, nevertheless, a deep postseason run, this is a game that we're going to think about. And this is a game that is going to hurt not only them in the standings, but also anytime a season comes to a close, anytime you lose, you begin to think about some of the weaknesses of your roster and where those weaknesses have risen. This is a game where it happened. They were at relative full strength. I realize Quentin Post and GP2 didn't play in this game. They were both missed. But this was a Spurs team that they should have handled regardless. And it's an unacceptable loss. It's an unacceptable defeat. The other thing that someone mentioned that I thought was a good observation, yes, in our YouTube chat, people were talking about this. The crowd, that's another part. Like, this game was a ho-hum. I talked about this pregame. This was a ho-hum, blue-collar, bring your lunchbox to work game, get in, get out, get a dub. The crowd, I think, approached it like it too. And to be fair, I don't think anybody expected them to lose this game up until Harrison Barnes hit the three-pointer. But the crowd was also a reflection of the energy that the team was displaying after the 7.5-minute mark of the first quarter. They came out, they were locked in defensively, they hit a couple shots, they went up 9-0, they went up 11-3, and then I think they just kind of rolled the ball out there and played. And the Spurs are a professional basketball team, too. They got players that make millions of dollars. And to their credit, they stepped up when it needed. And I don't think that the crowd was the issue necessarily, but again, it was just a reflection of the energy that the Warriors were displaying in this game. If you go look on television, the amount of seats that were empty at the beginning of the second half, and this has kind of been a case, but those seats weren't filled until like 8 minutes left in the third quarter. And that to me is because fans were not concerned about this game in the same way that the Warriors were not concerned about the San Antonio Spurs. They did not give them the proper respect tonight. I did not think they had the proper focus, and they did not have the requisite energy down the stretch to win the game. The crowd was looking, yes, for something to cheer for, to get into, but there was a moment where Moses Moody had a fantastic dunk. I think it was in the first half. He rose up and jammed it. And then he just walked to the bench, and there's not much of a celebration. The most excited I think the Warriors, the team, was tonight, and thus the crowd was as well, was when they were coming up in a transition in the third quarter. Jimmy Butler gives it to Buddy Hield, who drives baseline, bounce passes it to Butler, who kicks it out to Steph Curry, who nails a three-pointer, and Curry is hyping up Butler, and Buddy. He's pointing at him, and it's obviously in reference to the viral moment from Phoenix last night when Steve Kerr is saying, "Hi, let me introduce you to Steph Curry, buddy. He's the greatest shooter of all time. Give it to him. He's wide open." That was the most excited that the Warriors were tonight, was when Buddy Hield delivered a pass, and Curry was trying to get him going. Like, that was the most energy there was. And from then, it was just done. The Warriors did not have it tonight when they needed to have it. And it's a tough defeat. It's their second in 3 games. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it comes at the tail end of this condensed stretch of basketball, you know. And I think the fact that Harrison Barnes hit the dagger also, I know that one thing I thought about was, I think it was Game 4 of the first-round series in 2022 when Harrison Barnes had a three-pointer to win the game and put the Kings up at that point in the series, what would have been 3-1. He missed in Chase Center, and I don't know if that was on his mind, but he took both shots with an equal amount of confidence, and to his credit, he nailed that sucker tonight. There was nothing but the bottom. As for the Warriors' young players, I thought they played, kind of, again, if this is playoff basketball, I think they've played like it is the playoffs, which is up and down. Pods has been, again, awesome as of late. I think he looked like he was emerging before tonight in the same way that Jordan Poole emerged during that 2022 end of regular season stretch. The way that he's been shooting the basketball gave me confidence that if he's playing like that, the Warriors absolutely have action. But he's got to play like that every night, and that's hard to do, especially for a guy who's 22 years old in his second season. Moses Moody's in his 4th year, but this is the first season where he's getting really big minutes. It's the first time that he's been asked to be a starter, to guard guys again and again, and also be a spot-up knockdown three-point shooter. And he's not, I don't think, at that point in his career where he can be that yet. Might be able to be that player in the near future, but when young players get into big moments, you never know how they're going to react. And in other games, to be fair, the Warriors are 9-3 in clutch games decided by 5 points or less in 5 minutes or less. But young guys occasionally shrink. And tonight, I think across the game and in general, they did not have it the way that they did, obviously, against Denver, the Lakers, as well as against, Memphis. They didn't play particularly well, but against the Lakers and the Nuggets, I think both those guys were awesome. Buddy had to play 26 minutes tonight just because you needed an extra shooter on the floor, and those minutes probably would have been split a bit between him and Post, but Post was unavailable. Guy Santos was, I like Guy's energy, but tonight he was unplayable. Had a really bad stretch at the beginning of the second quarter. You heard Kerr talk about the difference in the game, beginning of the second, beginning of the fourth. Warriors got outscored by 13 in the second quarter. They got outscored by 15 in the fourth quarter against a Spurs team that they should have beaten. 888-957-9570 is the number. If we have any more calls, I will get to them before we get out of here. Let's go to Chardall in Fremont. Cam, if he's still around. Cam, Chardall, pardon me. What's going on, man?
Hey, Evan, it's great calling to 95.7 The Game. I'm a big fan of you. I try calling into every time I get the opportunity. I definitely call in. I love everything you're doing covering the Warriors.
What do you got, Chardall?
Tough loss for the Warriors tonight. They fall to the Spurs 114-111 on a game-winning three-pointer by Harrison Barnes. But I think I'm 100% optimistic, and I believe in this team that they're going to bounce back against Portland on Friday, and then they play the Clippers on on Sunday to round out the NBA regular season. But I have a lot of hope in this team that they can bounce back from this loss, because I'm a diehard Warriors fan, and I believe in my team so much. I know that they have a lot of future ahead of them if they want to avoid the play-in tournament. And I'll definitely call in next time on Warriors Wrap Up. I definitely love everything you're doing on here, and I hope you keep up the good work.
Thanks, Shardal. Appreciate the call, man. While Shardal was on the phone, I was actually looking at social media, and I saw a quote from Draymond Green that I do want to get into, because it's kind of a part of my final message of Warriors Wrap-Up here. Draymond Green said after the game, quote, "We're not children, we're adults, champions." They are, 4 times. "We know what it takes. We messed around with this game, and we lost. That's how it goes." Why did they mess around with the game? To me, it wasn't because they didn't want to win. It wasn't because they overlooked the Warriors knew how important this game was. They got 3 left in the regular season. They knew they needed to win out to determine how high they could climb in the standings. This was not a game 35 in early December or a game in March, which Draymond Green has been on record as saying he can't get up for. This was a game April 9th that they had to win against a team that was very beatable. They messed around with this game, to me, because they were fatigued. In particular, Draymond Green. The stamina was not there in the fourth quarter. It was the 6th game that they've played in 10 nights, and you saw them running on E in the second half against the Spurs. The only answer they had was throwing the ball to Jimmy Butler. Whenever anyone else initiated the offense, it did not result in consistent results. That's why they lost the game. It's because they were tired, because they ran into a wall. And if they do not go far in the postseason, or if they eventually get beat in the postseason, which, by the way, includes the play-in, because that's a place they currently are at, which in one-and-done scenarios, you never know, could end your season. It's going to be because they hit a wall. And it's going to be because they have now played 2 months, in their own words. Kerr talked about it after this game. He's reiterated it multiple times. They are playing playoff basketball. That is hard on your body. This is the second game in 2 nights in which Draymond Green is having to play minutes that at this point in the season, when they were 1 seeds, when they were running away, he did not have to play. And they've had to push themselves because of their lackluster start to the season, about the midway point in which they've suffered losses, and because of certain games that they have blown throughout this season. This was a game that they blew. Not a 16-point lead in the fourth quarter, but a 12-point lead. Double digits at different points in this game. They should have closed the Spurs out, and they could not, because to me, their best players were tired and their younger players were inexperienced. And when those two things mesh together, you run into these kinds of games where you get got against an opponent that you should absolutely take care of. And that is what scares me about what's moving forward for the Warriors, is that they very may well run into this wall again, and it's going to come at the wrong time. And if you're guaranteeing championships, you cannot get tired. If you're going to try and win championships, you're going to hit walls, but against better teams, that's going to come back to bite you. And the Spurs stole a game that the Warriors could not afford to lose. Again, I don't think it's because they messed around, or the reason why they messed around was due to the energy that they lacked. And that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, perhaps. But Draymond Green, I'm sorry, you got to be better. You know, on YouTube, TG's saying trap game. That's fair. You know, no grit. I'm sorry, there's no excuses at this point in the season. That's why it's so frustrating. That's why it's difficult to watch and stomach, and why a lot of people did not believe up until that final shot went in that the Warriors were going to lose. Because there's no way they could lose this game, right? Well, when you don't come correct, when you don't play focus for 48 minutes, when you're running on E after 6 games in 10 nights, you can be vulnerable. And I think that's what we saw from the Warriors tonight. So Thanks for everyone sticking around with us. Appreciate everybody who has called in this evening. Big thank you to Splash at Thrive City for helping us get set up here after the Warriors unfortunately fall to the Spurs. An awful loss tonight, 114-111 against San Antonio. Harrison Barnes with the game-winning shot. But, of course, we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, all day tomorrow on 95.7 The Game. 6 to 10, Joe Spadoni, Joe Shasky, 10 to 2, Steiny and Guru, and then, of course, Willard and Dibbs from 2 to 6. My name is Evan Giddings saying thank you, everyone, in our YouTube chat, everyone on our text line, everyone who's called in for chiming in to this edition of Warriors Wrap-Up live at Thrive City. I will talk to you next time on your home for Golden State Warriors basketball, 95.7 The Game. And also, before we go, never forget, thank you to Cameron Williams, our network coordinator, Chris O'Connell, back there cutting things up for us. Our fantastic production team cannot get out of here without thanking them back in our Laughing Monk studios. And now we can say goodbye. Thank you all. Have a good night.